Okay, very good morning. I hope you all have had time to get coffee, which I believe you do have. Welcome to this morning seminar on basic income. And this is, we have organized this with Visio, the Green Think Tank in Finland, and also the Green European Foundation, EGP in Europe. And we have some really interesting speakers from different countries today with us. We will start off first with Jamie Cooke from Scotland. Then we have Jane Millar from the UK, also, standing over there. Then we have Evangelista from Belgium. And finally, I will also, my name is Lukas Korpelainen. I will be telling you about the Finnish recent developments in basic income. But real quick before we let Jamie get online, I would also like to give you all a quick recap on what's going on in Finland right now, kind of a background. So, yeah, everybody, I guess, who has heard about the Finnish basic income experiment? Okay. I kind of assume that most of you might know that beforehand. Yeah, so yeah, we have had a lot of discussion about basic income in Finland, and we do have some support for it, especially within the Green and the leftist parties. Also, some support in this centrist party, which is a bit, it kind of has a kind of agrarian and conservative past, but that's also quite divided. That some of them like basic income and some of them are really opposed. And it also has a lot to do with the kind of image that these different social security models have. In Finland, actually, there has been a lot of discussion about reforming the social security system we have here, but a lot of the rhetoric has been focused on employment and how to get people to work instead of so much talking about poverty eradication, which I also think should be equally important on this topic. But basically all the parties throughout the political spectrum agree that we need a simpler system in Finland, and also we need to improve the economic but also bureaucratic incentives for work. But as I said, the models proposed by all these different parties vary quite a lot. Also, in recent years, quite a popular suggestion has been something akin to the universal credit model that the UK has been implemented, at least in some form. And I guess with the kind of unified thought that we have so many of these different kind of benefit categories that we should maybe combine them a bit and kind of streamline it a bit. But also, obviously, it has to be considered that how high will those benefits be. So then on the basic income experiment, so that ran through 2017 and 2018. So 2 years, it had 2,000 participants, and each were given 560 euros monthly basic income. There was no changes to taxation for the individuals, so if they went to work, they could still keep the whole of the basic income, but the taxation would be the same as it would be without the basic income. So obviously, if this model would be implemented in itself, it would not be economically feasible, but that was not the point of this experiment. It was more of a point of seeing how do people react to these kind of incentives and this kind of like guaranteed basic income. The experimental group consists mostly of long-term unemployed people, and this has also been criticized that it's a quite narrow group of people, especially since in this case this group was difficult to employ to begin with. So that obviously also kind of is mirrored in the results. And it was a randomized trial, so people were chosen at random. They received a letter saying that you will be in on this experiment. So the results. Well, we have now some preliminary results morning time. And so we have results for the first year only so far. And the results are that there wasn't any significant employment effects, but there was also higher well-being and trust amongst the recipients. So you can make a couple different interpretations of this. You can say that, aha, this experiment didn't increase employment, so it's not working. Or you can also say that, aha, this experiment did not make employment any worse. So it also, in a way, nothing is lost. But at the same time, you have better well-being. So you could kind of see that it's a positive. But as I said, this experiment, the group was quite narrow. Also, it wasn't very long. And then the group was only 2,000 people. So like far-reaching results or interpretations should not be maybe made on this experiment, but we will have more results next year. So we'll see what the final consensus will be, if there will be one. So what's next for Finland? We have this national income register that has now been implemented partially in the social security system, which means that where earlier, if you had a means-tested benefit and you had a taper rate, you would have to send in your copies of your paychecks, and then the social insurance institution would calculate that, okay, how much money do you now get, or how much money do you have to pay back? And with this register, that happens automatically, and this can streamline and automatize security systems very much. But that is still being implemented and also still being taken into these different benefits. So that work is continuing. Also, now we have a new government in Finland since April. And the government has agreed to test a negative income tax. So this is now, in a way, kind of like the next experiment after the basic income experiment. And some see that this is a chance to experiment with the same things as basic income, but with a different implementation. And some people see that it's something totally different. And we have no details on it yet, that what the experiment will be. But it will be similar in size to the previous experiment. Also, there will be a report on earned income tax credit. So also, it's a bit similar to the negative income tax, but it is a bit different because it's not automatic for all. You have to be working in this, but it's actually a separate project. So as you can see, we have multiple different types of kind of pilots and these reports coming in during this 4-year period. Also, there will be some other pilots for social security system benefits and also unemployment intervention pilots. And because there is consensus in Finland that we need a long-term overhaul of the whole system, now there will be starting a parliamentary committee to set guidelines for this reform for not only for this 4 years of this government, but also for the next 4 years. So that's basically the recap of what's going on in Finland now, and then we'll continue on with that later in mind. If you have quick questions, I can take it now, but then we'll let Jamie get online. Yes?
One question. How much did they get at the Pacific? How much did they get before on social grants or something like this? Because for me, 560 euros is not very much, so they will not be able to finance their life.
Yeah, so the question was, how much did these recipients receive otherwise or before? Yeah, this comes back to question that this 560 basically kind of was closely matched to this unemployment benefit people get anyways, but then we also have housing benefits, so it's not the whole picture of how much you get as a social security system level. So basically, it was trying to match closely what people now get after tax as an unemployment benefit. So there was some changes in the interaction between benefits, so that also had some interesting results in that some people would actually leave the basic income experiment because being offered, then you would also be allowed to get some other benefits that would make your situation a bit better. But this actually comes back to the complexities of the system we have now, that if you say that, okay, we want a basic income, then it's like, okay, so what do you want to replace with basic income? And you can replace this one piece of social security system, but then you also have these other pieces, and you should be looking at the whole picture.
Of course. And how high is the minimal income in Finland nowadays?
We don't actually have like a general minimum income
Okay.
in Finland, but we do have minimum incomes for different sectors of work, which are in fact minimum incomes. But as an hourly wage, it's around 7 usually. Like I think the lowest, somebody from Finland maybe knows, but
that's already the lowest. The minimum level of income in different branches are set in collective agreements in Finland, and I think the lowest ones in a very well paid services sector might be somewhere around €7 per hour.
€7 per hour.
Yeah, but they are probably the most lowest paid, and of course it sets the minimum, but you are allowed to pay more.
Yes, of course. How many people have to live on this in Finland?
well, that's actually a complicated question because we have so many different benefits. So we have people on different types of benefits and different combination of benefits. But actually, I'll get to that in my presentation later in detail.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, of course. Very good question. I think because especially with Jamie, we have some schedule restrictions. So I think it's time now to let Jamie take the stage via Skype, straight from Scotland.
Hi there.
Hey.
Okay, yes, my name is Jamie Cooke. I'm head of RSA Scotland, which I'll explain a little bit more about in a minute. I'm based just outside Glasgow in Scotland. And really what I wanted to do today was talk you through some of the journey that we've had recently in Scotland in looking at basic income as a potential policy and experimental idea here, because I think it's been a very interesting and speedy change in recent years, and I think hopefully it's something that we can open up to collaboration and opportunity with other parts of Europe as we move forward. My organisation, the RSA, is a think tank that's active across the world. We have about 30,000 fellows or members of the organisation. We're interested in a lot of different areas, ranging from economic security to changing nature of work, to issues around education, around how you involve citizens within the economy and within political decision making, and many other areas. For us, basic income was really interesting and challenging area around looking at how we respond to these issues of economic insecurity in the world today. And from my perspective, as well as that, the RSA, I sit on the Executive Committee of the UN, Basic Income Market, and I've been very involved in the discussions for the last few years, including speaking at the Basic Income World Congress, which took place last year in Tampere, so I had the joy of visiting the city last year. So I think it's fair to say that we live in very interesting times, and there's a reason that that was a curse rather than a blessing. You may all have noticed that here in the UK, we're going through a slightly complex process around Brexit. None of us have an idea what's going to happen with it. And obviously now we're into a general election as well. Within a Scottish context, we obviously had a referendum on independence in 2014. And it looks like there's a strong chance we'll have another referendum on independence in the next few years. As we start to respond to some of these opportunity challenges around the world we see ourselves in. Alongside that, though, we're seeing huge changes around the economy, around work. Clearly, we're seeing massive and hugely challenging times around the climate crisis we find ourselves in. On one hand, starting to see positive responses from the public, starting to push that up the agenda, but clearly the potential impacts that we see over the next few years can be devastating in many different areas. So we are in a very challenging period of time. But interestingly, certainly here in Scotland, whilst that could just lead to fear or claims what we have, it's also starting to push new ideas and a belief from the public and from policymakers that actually we can't go on as we always have. Now that always fits into the idea of rhetoric as well as reality. So on one hand, in Scotland, we have world-leading targets around climate change mitigation, at the same time as focusing heavily on how much money can make out of North Sea oil. So there is a challenge between rhetoric and reality, but I think we do have an interesting space here to try and look at new ideas and look at how we could function more successfully and sustainably and fairly as an economy and as a country. So I'm going to run through where we are and how we've got here, why it is the basic income is picking up interest in Scotland just now, and some of the next steps potentially around what that might look like, whether that be experimentation or whether that be policy making. And if anyone has any questions or if I'm talking too quickly or want to make clarification, then feel free to shout at the screen. So I imagine most people, given the context, are very familiar with what basic income is. Clearly, the Green Move have been some of the longest standing supporters and proponents of basic income. But clearly, we look at certain key characteristics. So the fact it's universal, it's unconditional, and it's regular and secure direct payment to each individual. And I think it's important to insight these four conditions because to me they're both the biggest opportunities of basic income, but also the biggest challenges, or at least the biggest pushback we get in the Scottish context, particularly around universality. So why do we want to give our payments to people who already have lots of money? I'll come back to that. But also the unconditionality. Now, to me, the removing of conditions is the biggest and most exciting part of basic. That's where we give people the trust and the belief and the freedom to make choices for themselves. But it also goes against, certainly in the UK, most recent trends in social security policy making. So the system that's used in the United Kingdom just now is called universal credit, and is deliberately designed to be a heavily conditional and punitive system. So although it's a single payment, there are very heavy conditions around looking for work, around punishments if you miss the meeting, and around fundamentally a presumption that everybody is trying to gain the system or gain benefits that they have right to. And I think that shifting society to a basis of not having trust in each other has been one of the most corrosive shifts in the UK and many Western countries in recent years. And I think the basic income offers a chance to push back against that, to actually restore a degree of trust into the basis of our social contract. And I think that's the bit that I find most exciting. But as I say, it also proves a challenge to many of our policymakers, even in the very kind of liberal and progressive side of politics, who still are used to the idea of a kind of paternalistic, top-down approach to policy making. In Scotland, we've had discussions around basic income for some time now. Some of our economists here, so Ecolo McCarthy, sadly died a few years ago, Annie Millar, who's a leading basic income economist and proponent. And we look at this for a while, but it's very much a fringe concept. Beyond the Scottish Ruling Party, there was no real political discussion of basic income, no real civic society discussion either. The first real breakthroughs were in 2015, Fife, which is an area north of Edinburgh, where places such as Dunfermline and St Andrews are located, organised what they call the Fair Fife Commission. As I said, really an external grouping who wanted to look at how the area could be favoured for its residents. And one of the recommendations they made out of a number of others was to experiment with a basic income in a town in Fife. And it was fascinating that it picked up a lot of interest very quickly from people in Scotland. From an RSA perspective, we got involved shortly afterwards. We hosted an annual Millar lecture, invited Professor Gary Standing, a world leading figure within the basic income movement, to give that in April 2016. And I would really admit, as someone who's now heavily involved in this movement, I was sceptical when I got involved first. I saw it as a useful provocation around the failings that we could see in social security in the UK, but it seemed a very distant or utopian idea. And I think it's been fascinating that in that period of time, since 2016, we've seen very rapid movements and interest. Really, I suppose, in the bit of that year, when the city of Glasgow, Scotland's big city, expressed support for the idea of testing basic income in Glasgow, which, combined with by interest from other areas, started to push a degree of momentum around what could we look at, what could we test, what could we experiment with. And obviously this was going on in the context of the experiments in Finland, and the beginning of the experiment in Canada and elsewhere. The biggest breakthrough, I suppose, in recent years was in September 2017. I was over in the US at the time, and I said at the talk, one thing you will not hear is the Scottish Government publicly supporting the idea of experimenting with basic income. And the reason for that is because Scotland, as it stands, cannot deliver a basic income. And we only control about 15% of the social security budget. The majority of it still being run from the UK government in Westminster, London. And so there was a feeling that the Scottish government, despite openness, lacked the ability or the powers to deliver this and didn't want to involved. That was on Tuesday. I went to bed, wake up the next morning to an email from the First Minister's office in Scotland saying, news this afternoon in programme for government, their legislative programme for the year, we're going to make financial support to explore basic income experiments. So I was very happy to be proven wrong about that public expression of support. And so the Scottish Government put £250,000 into a feasibility study and group to look at whether we could run basic income experiments in Scotland. And that's underway just now, and I'll feed back with some of the work that's been taking place. Since then, from an RSA perspective, we ran a piece of work in Fife, looking at what basic income for Scotland could look like. Gary Standing published a report for the Shadow Chancellor of the UK, John McDonnell, the UK Labour Party, which has also been shifting them towards a position of supporting the idea of the experiment. So quite a rapid shift in terms of political, civic and popular support to the idea of certainly experimenting with the idea of basic income. And what's really fascinating, I suppose, comparing the basic income discussion in Scotland with the global discussion, is that the driving force behind it has been very much the idea of basic income as a means of social justice. So whereas perhaps in the US the drive has been around automation and artificial intelligence, I think in Scotland it's much been about fairness, about equality, about combating poverty. I think there's an argument to be made that we need a better bringing together of the two strands of motivation. At the end of the day, the impacts of automation are going to be an impact of social justice for communities who previously been affected. But I think this has given a very different complexion to the interest in support for basic income in Scotland. I think there's a number of reasons why it's happening now. I touched on the fact of the changing nature of work and technological change. We've also had a lot of upheaval in the UK. I touched on British independence. And I think this is given in a positive sense. We're trying to find any positives we can here tonight. I feel like that things are in flux, and therefore it is sensible to challenge the established forms. That actually things will not just always go on the way they always have. There is a chance to do things differently. That can be both current for positive change as well as negative. In Scotland as well, we have some deeply engaged challenges across many of our communities around unemployment, around health inequalities, around poverty, that again I think people in Scotland realise we've tried to change these in the past 50 years with very positive intentions, but by trying the same approaches over and over again with unsurprisingly similar results. And so there's a feeling of, if we do genuinely want a fairer country, we need to try things in a different way. We're seeing new push around economic models, so the idea of well-being economies, of inclusive growth, of obviously sustainable economies that can move forward. We have a big event at the end of the month with the Club of Rome, new economic models in the time of climate crisis, which are pushing that idea of pushback against I suppose capitalism in its wider sense, but also the idea of how we approach the social contract of the recent years. We do have limited financial controls in Scotland, but just now we're trying to create a different space. So currently the Scottish Government spends around £100 million a year to mitigate the worst impacts of social security approaches in Scotland. So there's an attempt to think differently we can tap into. And the thing is that Scotland is a small country. That gives us challenges, it gives us opportunities to engage with our citizens. And I think that the fact that the basic income discussions have placed Scotland in a leadership role globally, but one that's also part of a growing coalition of interested parties, sits very nicely with our aspiration to be a outward-looking, small global nation, and I think that plays very nicely. Within the UK context, the UK government is opposed to basic income as it stands now. Next month we'll have a pre-Christmas election, and who knows what governments will be in power after that. But as it stands, the Conservative governments are wedded to the idea of universal credit, even though every indication is universal credit is turning out to be absolute disaster and inhumane system we warned it would be. If you ever read Korpelainen, UN's Special Rapporteur on Extreme Poverty, delivers on the UK government approach. It's a mixture of heartbreaking and infuriating around the deliberate approaches that are being taken here. So the UK government suppose that we're starting to see an upsurge in opposition to that inhumane system. The Scottish Government, as I say, is much more open at this stage. They're not committed to basic income as a policy. They are supportive of the idea of exploring potential for Scotland. But what we've seen in the UK and in Scotland has been that the work so far has taken to be led by local authorities, so local government, and by civic society. And I think actually that's a very positive space to start from, because it allows us to avoid as much as possible get involved in party politics, but actually to allow a growth of civic-led interest to these new ideas that I think is very positive and gives us a better space for making progress. As I mentioned, the Scottish Government has put this money into a feasibility study. It's just published its interim reports. I'm very happy to share links afterwards with anyone who might be interested, and happy to share this presentation. And this will be led by 4 local authorities, so Glasgow and Edinburgh, Scotland's biggest city, Glasgow, and the capital city, Edinburgh, as well as 2 other areas, Fife and North Ayrshire, which gives a good mixture of communities and representation of Scotland's population. And as I say, this is not commitment, this is it for the idea of experimentation in Scotland just now. they're looking, what can we learn from the other pilots, experiments that take place? What can we learn from Finland? What can we learn from the experiments in Ontario and Canada that were cancelled so suddenly and so disgracefully by the changed political administration? Thoughts in California, the DIF experiment that done underway in the Netherlands or in Barcelona, and there's a lot of activity out there you can collaborate with and learn from. And I suppose really looking at what's possible within a Scottish context. We have a very difficult context because of our nature of being a devolved nation within the United Kingdom. I mentioned that the limited control of social security we have, but this also means that there are different benefits in different places, and trying to balance those out is going to be a huge challenge. Ideally, Europe would like to see quite large-scale saturation, so experiments for help the community where everybody receives the basic income, in order to see some of those community-level changes and impacts that we would expect to see from a basic income. And that's going to be a very interesting development over the next year. I am sceptical as to whether we get large-scale experiments off the ground. I've got an article next week, the Great European Journal, that suggests that perhaps what we're more likely to see are micro experiments, very small-scale experiments that allow us to test aspects of basic income, just because of the complexity of the legislative and economic system we have in place in Scotland. But I think the ambition is a very positive one to have, and I think it gives us a good space to try and build on. So still, as it stands, the feasibility group are looking to start experiments in 2021. As I say, given Brexit, given Scottish independence referendum, given the challenges of the current systems, I think that's very ambitious, but I think there's a lot that we can do within that to try and get forward. We published a report, as I say earlier this year, which looked at the basic income itself for Scotland. I'm not going to go into the details of that just now, but I would recommend having a look at it. You can download it from our website, or we can share the links after this. Because what we're trying to do is lay out realistic models of the basic income could be delivered in Scotland. Now, they're very modest in many ways in terms of the levels of payment, but even with those two modest levels that we suggested, the potential impact on poverty and deprivation in Scotland is huge, with the slightly higher level eliminating deprivation altogether under our economic modelling. So I think there's a really powerful space there. That's to say, the models are for provocation. It's not to say that they're ways they have to deliver, but that this is possible. We're not talking about a utopian, undeliverable idea. This is something that, with a degree of change, but is possible to deliver in Scotland moving forward. And I think that is a very exciting and important opportunity for us to grasp. We also work very closely with residents in Fife, and I think ensuring we get the views of the public, of the people who would directly participate in these experiments or these policies, front and centre to our discussions, I think is essential. This can't be a policy that's created in the abstract or in back rooms with no public engagement. This has to be something that is owned and trusted and taken forward by the wider public. And certainly in Scotland, but from my experience discussions around the world, there is a real public appetite there from the partners for challenges, of course. But I think there is a space there now that what happens from that technique is a really big space for moving forward. As I mentioned, there are big challenges for us here in Scotland to progress. We do have political appetite, but we also have a huge amount of political upheaval and distractions and challenges, and frankly other priorities that have to be dealt with in the first instance. I mentioned the immune system responses. If we look at change to large-scale social structure, They conceive responses that are almost like the body's immune system, where entrenched interest push back against these new ideas. We need to work with the system and through the systems and around the systems to see how we can take those forward. As I said, the evolved context is very difficult for us. So the Department of Work and Pensions, who run Social Security in the UK, and Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs, who run our tax system, as it stands, are very powerful barriers to taking ideas forward in Scotland. And finding ways to bring them on board or to have them at least not get in the way are critical to any particularly larger scale experiments. Finances is a challenge, of course. We're looking at additional spend around this. Basic income not and shouldn't be a cost-neutral policy from my perspective. In the long term, it will have financial benefits around the potential, the positive impacts of health that we expect to see, for example. It does cost money. In a time of austerity in the UK is a challenge to discuss. And as I mentioned earlier, the social backers are an issue. Do we have a universal system so that higher earners receive it as well? Now, with any system that's being suggested, higher earners would not gain financially from a basic income because they would be paying higher rates of tax and therefore would pay more into the system than they would receive out. To me, the important aspect of universality is that generally, certainly in the UK, the systems which have been universal, so for example the National Health Service, have retained long-lasting public support. The systems which have been made conditional or not universal, so for example housing benefits, are often the ones that are most quickly attacked politically and fined. So that universality and that restoring of the universal social contract is important. As I say, the conditionality as well, to me is critical, but it faces challenges. People raise the concerns of what if people spend this on alcohol or socially unacceptable. Putting aside the fact that the Scottish economy runs on the basis of how much alcohol we can sell. And I think it's a challenge to people saying, well actually, what are the additional support structures we need in place? But also, what if we actually trust people? What if we start to get back? And of course, the evidence from direct cash payments around the world has suggested that people do not spend it on these negative perceptions of spending. There are changes across the UK just now, so a lot of interest in the north of England, cities like Leeds, Sheffield, Liverpool, very much pushing to try and experiment basic income. As mentioned, the Chancellor has expressed a lot of support, and potentially a Labour-led government in the UK could change the support for basic income experiments quite drastically. And we're also seeing support in Wales, where the First Minister there is keen to take forward opportunities. So I think we have opportunities to move forward despite our challenges. I think there are opportunities around experiments. As I said, I'm not sure whether the large-scale experiments will be possible. I think it's possible to run small experiments with community groups, small neighbourhoods, that allow us to test aspects of basic income and move the debate forward. I think there's a huge opportunity for the public discussion, for the role of the media, to actually start to have this wider discussion around the type of country and society we want to be. I think the chaos that's around is a huge challenge. I think it does give us an opportunity to say we need to do things differently. The status quo will not exist. So how do we take that forward in a positive way? And as I say, there is potential for changes of government and changes of politics that could very quickly change in a positive sense the space that we have for taking some of these ideas forward. I think there's space for collaboration with other policies, so the discussion around universal basic services, around a 4-day working week, for example, give us a space to build a wider light. Basic income is not a unicorn, it's not going to solve every problem on its own. It's a foundation built on top of. We've looked at compromises, so are there ways we can introduce a basic income over a period of years that allow us to get that? And I think we'll keep it. Some of the other aspects of basic income that haven't been explored enough, so for example, its impact around mental health, its impact on the climate and environmental issues, I think can be really exciting and tightly wider debate we're having just now. So I think it's a really interesting space. We've got the Visio World Congress coming to Glasgow in 2021, and I think that's going to be very much a focal point for us to work towards. To be able to say that actually, yes, here in Scotland, we're a small country, but we're a country that are committed to working with our partners around the world, and that actually do have a space, both publicly and politically, to take some of this change forward, to rebuild our social contract, and to create a new system, one with basic income as a foundation stone, that actually allows us to create that fair net society that we'd like to see. So I think it's a very exciting space, and I hope that whilst this is a whistle-stop tour through it, there will be opportunities for us to work together here in Scotland and further afield in taking those ideas forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jamie. All right, so then it's time for questions. You're gonna have to ask your questions to the microphone so Jamie can hear you. Does anybody have anything they'd like to ask straight away? In that case, I can start off right away. Yeah, thank you, Jamie, very much for your presentation. Would you have any information on on any details on what kind of models might the possible Scottish experiments include?
Yeah, sorry, I'll try to bring myself back up now. Sorry. So in terms of the models, I think we're looking at trying to do, as I say, in a larger scale saturation site. So looking at maybe 2-3 communities in Scotland and giving it to everybody in those communities. Now, the interim reports of these Belgian group has been released this week. You can get that online. And actually, I would say their ambition has been considerably more than we even expected in the beginning. So they were talking about participants within that of around maybe 16,000 people in Scotland, which would be obviously quite a large-scale experiment at the end. They also proposed within those that they would test out 2 different levels of basic income, so a lower level and a slightly higher level, to see whether there's a difference in impact of increasing the financial support that's given to it. Now, as I say, they would be fascinating experiments to get underway. The challenge is that to take forward those sorts of 2 to 3 year large-scale experiment, 16,000 people, it's another 16,000 in a control group, I think is going to be very challenging in the current climate we find ourselves in. So I expect what we'll see developing is the ambition to have those large-scale experiments combined with maybe slightly more realistic stats of flow data in the meantime, what could we also do? So that could be very, very small scale. So running an experiment with, handful of people for a year. Now, it won't prove the concept of basic income itself, but it will allow us to look at some of the delivery mechanisms, and it will allow us to look at some of the impacts we would expect to see, whether that's around well-being, around physical, mental health, around entrepreneurial behaviour, that perhaps could be looked at in a smaller scale. And if these were to take place, talking say, one in Glasgow, one in Fife, one in Leeds, one in Wales, even if they are individually quite small, they start to create a small body of data, evidence, of discussion points, of stories that I think contribute to the wider political debate. So certainly the models just now being proposed are fantastically ambitious, and I think it'll be very interesting over the next year to see to what extent those are possible to take forward.
Thank you. Do you have any new questions from the audience at this point? Yes, you will get a video for this, and the PowerPoint will be included also in that. I would still maybe like to ask Jamie, myself, since in many different countries, and we all have very different and often complex systems of taxation and current benefits, do you have any ideas on, in the case of Scotland, that how would you change taxation with the basic income, or what would be like the obvious benefits to replace with a basic income?
So, in terms of the full life of basic income, we would certainly see a lot of existing individual benefits would be rolled into the basic income system. I think it's worth pointing two things would be kept separate under the current systems. One is disability support, because that's an individual support, not a societal one. The other one we really struggle with in Scotland and the UK is housing benefits, because the housing market is so diverse in terms of its levels that it's virtually impossible to build housing benefits in. In terms of taxation, paying for it, so as a starting point, clearly we look at income tax, and we propose reintroducing a top level of income tax for highest earners, which would contribute into that of 50%, which globally is not necessarily a huge level, but in the UK there's been a huge push down to taxation levels in recent years. Would be a return to what they were previously. But I also think we have to look at more than just income taxation, much as that's an important and a fair part of the underpinning. To me, basic income is partly a response to a changing world and a changing economy. We also need to look at how our taxation systems change within that. So for me, that's looking at clearly the impacts on green taxes and climate-related taxes. I think it's looking at things like land valuation taxation. Certainly in the UK, land is still a huge issue in terms of control and where power and money sits. But also I think, and I don't have an answer to this at this point, but I think we need to look at data. So to me, data is one of the biggest resources of the world today. The amount of money being made off data transfer is immense. And yet none of it really is going to us as individuals or as nations. It's flowing into private pockets, obviously lots of them large tech conglomerates around the world. And so I think starting to look at how society can benefit from that transfer of our data, I think could be a really powerful contribution into the funding streams for this. Clearly, it's an area though from a technological perspective as well as a legislative one that requires further work and looking at.
We have a question.
Good morning, Jamie. I'm Peter from Germany. My question is, you had several ifs and whens. What is your estimate with how many percentage do you think that Scotland will have at one point really on basic income? Is it 80%, is it 50, 40, 30, 90?
I would say just now, it's probably sitting around 40. I was hoping
40? Is that 40?
40%. I'm an optimist. I think the biggest challenge we face is that something has to change for Scotland to be able to do this. So even if we get the political bill, either Scotland has to come into the country and can choose to embed basic income as the foundation to that set up, or the UK has to change as a more federal, devolved country where Scotland has control over finances. I can't see the UK government shifting anytime soon, even if this changes towards supporting a basic income across the UK as a whole. So I think it will come from Scotland having the ability to make decisions, and that will either be from, as I say, going down independence or going down the path of a federal devolved country. Now, both of those are pretty significant political and cultural changes. And whilst we're seeing sport, for example, for independence start to grow, you can equally imagine that in the chaos of Brexit, people will want to see less change rather than even more. So I think it's not, any discussions you hear of Scottish independence being inevitable, I would say are a bit overstated at this point. I think we've gone from Scotland probably having a 0% chance in 2016 to, I would say, around 40% chance just now. I'm very confident in building that over the next couple of years. And really start to push that forward to see change. What I think has been fascinating recently is more of a push against the idea of experiments. So people actually say, look, if this is a good idea, if this could change how society functions, why are we testing it? We didn't test the National Health Service in the UK, we introduced it against a lot of opposition. And I think there's an interesting space there. I still think there's a role for experiments for that public and political discussion. But it's interesting that in some ways the build-up of support for taking this forward is growing quite significantly. And I think that gives us a very strong base to move on and take forward.
One more question?
Yes.
Just one more question. Even in Germany, it's hard to convince conservative or neoliberal thinking people that this would be a good idea. So even the left-wing parties are not really on this point. So what is different in Scotland's society that you are so convinced that this idea would have really a chance?
So, interestingly, I would say the pushback in Scotland would be more from the left than the right. Partly on the basis of Scotland's very paternalistic country still. And so there's a feeling of, you can't involve this in the power of people, and particularly if you mention anything to do with freedom or economy, it's viewed through a Thatcherite neoliberal lens, which is pretty unpopular here in Scotland. What I think is different is a combination of these deeply entrenched challenges. We've actually had left-leaning governments in Scotland for the majority of the 20th century, even if not on the UK level. The politics of Scotland has been at the left. We have tried to address that, and it hasn't changed. The poverty, the poor life expectancy for men, particularly in the west of Scotland, are so deeply entrenched that I think that creation of a coalition of people wanting to try new things actually opens up a really interesting space. I think the other thing that's added to it is after the Scottish independence referendum in 2014, you had a large movement of people, many of them younger people, a very strong movement in the Green movement, who were left wanting a different country but feeling that the outcome they wanted they hadn't achieved. And actually there's been a real connection from that movement to within the basic income movement of saying, well actually here's a policy that can potentially offer this type of country we wanted to see. And I think that has helped to drive a public engagement that perhaps hadn't been previously, where it was seen as more of an abstract concept. I think the other thing is that politically, we're seeing a lot of conversations around this across the parties. And because it's been driven by civic society and local society, local authorities, it's meant that the political party kind of take that seat. And so individual politicians have been able to engage with it to a greater degree than saying, well, this is an SNP, Scottish National Party policy, or a Labour policy, or a Green policy. And that's meant that even at local levels, the Conservatives in many cases have had quite a lot of involvement in the discussions. So I think that gives us a space. I don't think we're unique. I don't want to overstate that the public of Scotland are marching in the street demanding that this can come tomorrow. But I think we do have very positive starting points in terms of public engagement. The Scottish independence referendum saw nearly 100% of people in Scotland register to vote, and a turnout in the referendum of over 80%. There's a public engagement and willingness in Scotland just now that I think is quite promising for that kind of social change.
Thank you very much.
Do you have any more questions before we let Jamie off the hook? Okay, Jamie, thank you very much for coming and speaking with us.
Thank you for having me. Really good to contribute. And as I say, very happy for the presentation to be shared. And I can send through some of the links to the reports that I mentioned for anyone who wants more detail of some of the kind of in-depth. And my contact details are there. Please do follow up with me if you want to discuss any of this further or look at how we can work together on this. I think it is a really exciting space to talk tonight.
Yes, that sounds excellent. Please do stick around as long as you want to listen on to the next speaker until they have to leave. And you can maybe do the honors on the computer. So, and then I would like to invite on stage our next speaker, who is Jay Millar, Professor of Social Policy, I do believe, from the University of Bath, also in the UK. And now I think we will be hearing more about universal credits, I do believe also. That's right.
Okay, thank you, and thank you very much for the opportunity to come along here today. It's a great pleasure to be here and see the first snow of the year, so thank you very much.
Take the mic, please.
Microphone a little bit more, yeah. So we've already heard a little bit about universal credit so far, and that's mainly what I'm going to focus on, the big reform of the UK social security system. And I suppose I come with a bit of a cautionary tale in the challenges of radical reform. So my presentation is divided into three main parts. What is universal credit? How is it working? And then a little bit at the end talking about how universal credit and basic income might, or things we might learn one across the other. You're about to learn more about universal credit than you ever thought you wanted to know. So universal credit, it was announced in a white paper in the UK in 2010, Universal Credit Welfare That Works, and what it does is create an integrated working age benefit. So it brings 6 existing provisions, 4 means-tested benefits, 2 tax credits, together into one single system. So it's rolling 6 means-tested benefits into one means-tested benefit. And it's for people both in and out of work. In the UK, the system has always been separate systems for people in work and for people out of work. So one of the major changes is that it covers people both in and out of work. Despite the name universal, it isn't universal. It doesn't include everything. A number of important aspects of the social security system are not included in this provision. So it doesn't include child benefit, which remains as a single payment for all children. It doesn't include some disability benefits and carers allowance. It doesn't include local means-tested benefits for paying local taxes. And it doesn't include national insurance benefits, which actually are dwindling, still part of the UK system, although dwindling in importance. Means testing is very important in the delivery of social security in the UK. So it's a major and radical change. And the purpose behind it, I suppose, were threefold, or I've divided into 3 elements here. A simpler structure, so this is going to be a simpler structure, which will therefore support work, make it easier for people to make the transition into work. You won't have to leave one system and claim a different benefit. Make it easier for you to change jobs, because you'll still continue to receive your universal credit. And reduce high marginal tax rates, which are created by having lots of different benefits all interacting together. Secondly, it would improve delivery, so it's going to be a simpler system, easier to get into, easier for people to understand, cheaper to administer, reduce fraud, therefore, and improve take-up. If you've only got one benefit, you will have taken it up, and that will you'll be in the system. And finally, a much more transformational sort of goal. It's about changing the welfare state. It's about changing the relationship between people and the state. So transformative for the job centres who deliver it, for local authorities, for the voluntary sector, for employers, but in particular for individuals. And there was a lot of rhetoric at the beginning about reducing dependency, making people able to stand on their own 2 feet, as it were, and be in work. So it's transformational goals as well. And when it first was announced and brought into effect, there was a lot of support for the principle. So the general principle that we should have a simpler system that would help people ease the transition from benefits to work, that would make work pay, that would get rid of, I think Lukas mentioned, all these different benefits that interact in different ways. So I've just given you 2 quotes there of people supporting it, but actually, in general, the principle was very well supported at the time of the introduction or the first discussion. I'll skip that one. The scope of it is massive. When it's finally rolled out, there will be about 7 million households who will be in the scope of universal credit. And that goes quite a way up the income scale. That chart's possibly a little bit out of date because of the way things have changed since then, but it shows that single people, couples with children, single parents with children, all will be within the range of universal credit. And although it's targeted most on the lowest income, it does go quite a way up the income scale. It's going to cost more than 60 billion a year, making up a quarter of all welfare spending and 2/3 of working age welfare spending. So it is a massive proposal. It is the welfare state for people of working age, or will be, if we ever get there. This is what's projected to happen. The design of it, so a bit on the way it works, it's a basic amount, everyone gets a basic amount, and then on top of that there are amounts for children, for disability, for caring for a severely disabled person, for housing costs, and actually I forgot to put on also for childcare costs. So there are different elements that make up the... And crucial to it is the claimant commitment. This is the conditionality. So everyone, as they come into universal credit, has to sign a claimant commitment, which is about how they're going to look for work. So it's about the work requirements. And if you don't sign the commitment or you don't keep the commitment, there are sanctions. You could lose amounts of your benefit. And the claimant commitment applies to everyone. It's a household means test. But if you're a couple, for example, both of you have to individually sign this commitment. So both the man and the woman, the mother and the father in households with children must say what they're going to do in order to seek work. So conditionality is very central to the design of universal credit. The means test itself is aimed to be like work. So the idea was that it should be as much like being in work and getting a wage as possible. So it's a monthly assessment and a single monthly payment. Quite a change from the UK. Most of our benefits are paid fortnightly or even weekly, so moving to a monthly system has been quite a significant change in the way in which people receive their benefits. And the financial incentives, you can see the chart there. It starts off with some people get a work allowance, so the first bit of earnings are disregarded and not taken into account. And then after that, the taper, the universal credit, is reduced at a rate of 63%. So it does still take away after a certain level. And that taper, the work allowance doesn't apply to anyone. Single people immediately start to lose the universal credit once they have some earnings. The delivery is also different. It was designed from the start to be digital. Online application and claim management. So you claim online and then you manage your account online. So all your work requirements, your job search and everything, you have to log in. Again, this has been quite challenging for people who haven't necessarily had access to or competence, expertise, experience in using digital systems, but it's a digital by design, as it was described. And the work coaches, who are the staff in the local offices who work directly with claimants, have a more extended role in terms of helping people into work. And actually, when I talk about the conditionality, the other aspect of conditionality that is important in universal credit is that people in work are also required, if they're working part-time, to show that they're looking for longer hours. So people in work also have some conditions attached about how much work they should do, and they may be required to seek additional hours if they're working part-time. Local authorities and housing associations have a big role to play to help people on the ground in making claims. The Citizens Advice, which is an independent organisation, has recently signed a contract with the government to help provide people to get into the system. And the government last week, I think, announced this Universal Credit Transition Fund, which is a new fund for voluntary organisations to apply for to help people claim in the system. The two pictures I've got there, the top one on the top is a bus stop. in South London. So this is the rollout of universal credit and adverts being placed around, and actually quite controversially, adverts being placed around the country. So the picture, it doesn't come out very well, but that's a work coach opening doors for you, so getting you into work. The one below it is from a local authority, actually in Wales. Local authorities have a role, as I say, in advising people. And I put it there because the universal credit doesn't have to be scary. It's something of an indictment when you have to sell your social security benefits by telling people that they shouldn't be scared of claiming into the system. So it's an interesting indictment of how the universal credit has appeared. I'll say a bit more about that. Then the delivery. Well, it was announced in 2010. The rollout, the first people came into the system in 2013. And the original intention was that we would be there by now, we'd be well there by now, it would all be rolled out and everything would be operating. In fact, the timetable has been revised several times, and the chart on the far side shows the original. The lines move over and over. The first red line is the original plan. It started then, we'd have everyone into the system by about 2017-18. And the rollout has been changed several times over the years. The plan now is that we won't have everyone into this new system until 2023. So this is going to take, 10, 13, 14, 15 years to get people, to get this new system operating. It is by no means a quick process. And there are two ways into the system. One is called natural migration. That is, if you're a new claimant and you need to make a claim, you will come into the universal credit system. Or if your circumstances change, say you're receiving a tax credit already and your circumstances change, you will now be required to change universal credit. But the big challenge is to get everyone who's already on those other benefits, the legacy benefits as they're called, across through a system called managed migration. So you have to stop everyone's existing benefit and move them across into the new system. A massive challenge as well. And the second chart shows that what we're in at the moment is still the natural migration, and the managed migration actually hasn't really started as a pilot this year. So by July this year, we've got about 2.3 million people in universal credit, about 1.8 million households. Remember I said there were going to be 7 million households or more. 57% of those into the system have no children. They start with the single people as the simplest people to bring in. So largely speaking, couples with children and lone parents are not yet in the system, they're just coming in. About a third of the people currently getting it are in work. So it's a mixture of in-work and not. A long way still to go in terms of getting this benefit rolled out and getting everyone into the system. And of course things change as we go along. So we're not in the same world as we were in when universal credit was announced, and in particular austerity. So at the same time as the government have been rolling out universal credit, we've had a 10-year period, or longer than that, of austerity policies. So the government response to the financial crisis was we have to cut back public spending, and social security, particularly if people of working age, took a lot of those cuts. We've had a benefit freeze, 5-year benefit freeze, so benefits for most benefits for people of working age haven't been increased. And we've had a number of other restrictions. There's a benefit cap, there's a limit to the amount you can get. There's something called the bedroom tax that says if you've got more bedrooms than you need, calculated by the size of your family, you won't get support, you'll lose some money in your housing benefit. There's a 2-child limit, which says that if you have a third child and you're on benefits, you won't get any extra money for that third child, and there's a cut in premiums. Quite a severe set of punitive measures that have been introduced. So at the same time as universal credit's been rolled out, we've seen all these cuts and restrictions to social security benefits. The labour market's also changed a lot in those 10 years. Well, a lot. The labour market's also changed. So unemployment has gone down. So registered unemployment is at quite a low level in the UK at the moment. Employment rates are up. So in terms of the proportion of working age people in work. Wages have been fairly static, though. We haven't seen much change in the wages and real wages. And jobs insecurity is up. So the labour market context is a bit different. And I can't resist just putting on DWP leadership. We've had 7 Secretaries of State in the Department of Work and Pensions since 2010. So that's like 1 a year, something like that. this is a big job, and getting into that job and getting on top of it is a bit of a challenge. So the fact that political leadership has rapidly, even though we've only had the same government, as it were, the political leadership has rapidly changed. And the evidence so far, how is it working? So we're these years into it. Well, 4 main sources I identified there. The DWP has their own evaluation and administer. That's the Department of Work and Pensions who administer this. So they've been looking at and evaluating in various ways. But most of their evidence, I have to say, so far applies to single people, not to the full, because the volume of people coming onto universal credit has been much lower than expected. The evidence about how it's working is much more restricted, so we don't have such good evidence. There's a lot of what I call on-the-ground evidence. So this is the lived experience of people trying to get into the system or being in the system, often coming from organisations supporting claimants or advising them. And that's probably the most evidence that we have about how it's working, which of course is important evidence because it tells us how people experience it and what it's like, but inevitably a bit partial because it's telling you about people who are coming forward who are, where the issues and problems are. And then there's independent research, which is mostly still ongoing. I'm part of a team that's evaluating and looking closely at universal credit and how it works out for couples. So we're looking at what the change requirements mean for couples, how they divide up their work and care for their children, what it means for their money management to have only one single payment as opposed to different payments. But we've just done the first round of our interviews and we're analysing it at the moment. We're going to go back to those families next year and do a second round, but it's still ongoing, so the evidence is just emerging. Now then I have to say the media, including social media, has been very active. So there's been a lot of commentary, lots of websites, lots of Twitter following, Facebook and so on, a lot of discussion on social media about universal credit and how it's working. Again, a particular framing, because a lot of that discussion is very negative and very anti the system. But I would say overall the evidence, despite we've been 10 years almost in the making now, is still pretty patchy about how it works. Will it make any difference to employment rates? Will it help people progress in work? Will it help people stay in work? The National Audit Office, who are responsible for an independent body or a government official body that's responsible for value for money issues, produced a report in 2018 which is quite a good summary of where we are, what we know. They say the customer satisfaction is not that great, it's much the same as before. Some good things about the work coaches, but lots of evidence about people struggling to claim the benefit, about delays in payment, about hardship and limited help. One of the things I should mention, because it's been so prominent in the discussions in the UK, is that when you first come into universal credit, you have to wait 5 weeks for your first payment. So there's a 5-week delay built into the system. It's not it's not an unintended, it's built into the system. It takes you 5 weeks to get to your first payment, which, as you can imagine, is pretty tricky if you've got no other, if the reason you're claiming is you've got no other source of income. Waiting 5 weeks is a bit problematic. And the Audit Office concluded there was lots to do to improve efficiency, that we didn't know a lot about impact, as I just said. They concluded we'll never be able to measure the employment outcomes. They thought because of the way it had been rolled out across the country, we didn't have those comparisons, and concluded not value for money now, and its future value for money is unproven. So pretty damning report, really, pretty negative report. I think Jamie mentioned this other report. The UN Special Rapporteur was in the UK in 2018 looking into issues of poverty and human rights. And as part of that, looked at the universal credit system, and his report was also very damning. No programme embodies the combination of benefit reform and austerity than universal credit, fast falling into universal discredit. And he identifies a number of problems with it, the 5-week wait, the deductions, the job applications, etc. And he talks about the way in which the preparations for the future rollout resemble the sort of activity one might expect for an impending natural disaster. So there's sort of back to the scariness of universal credit, that people are coming into it feeling that this is supposed to be a support system, but actually is causing a lot of problems for people. So no shortage of critiques and ideas for reform. As has been mentioned, we're in an election period at the moment. The manifestos aren't yet published. Labour have said that they will abolish, though. The Labour Party have said that they would abolish universal credit. Conservatives almost certainly won't. So we get to see, as it were. But There's a lot of critiques and ideas for reform. The All-Party Parliamentary Group came out with various different ideas. All these NGOs and think tanks. Two of the UK's most popular press, The Sun and the Daily Mirror, both have campaigns running to say that universal credit should be changed. They don't often agree with each other, so that's quite something. The trade unions are generally unsupportive of it, and as I said, the social media is also quite critical. So there's lots of ideas to either slow down the roll-up and reform it, so the pause and fix is sometimes described as, stop it altogether. That might cause quite some problems since we're 10 years down the line, but a lot of views about major changes are needed. What's the future? Well, it's hard to know. DWP and the government argue these are all teething problems and it'll all settle down, it'll all be resolved in the end. But we've got this managed migration still to come, lots of people still to come into the system, and that will be almost certainly causing more big publicity. Too big to fail. The National Audit Office in their report actually concluded it was too late to abolish it. It was too embedded in the system, it was too much, and we couldn't then change it. But the question of whether it's fit for future purpose, fit for our labour market, fit for in-work progression, fit for gender roles, as I say, it's a one family earner benefit. It isn't very good on individualisation. So who knows what the future, I'm not about to make any predictions about where it will go. But let me just finish off with a couple of slides just on universal credit and universal basic income. Because clearly there are some similarities in the rationale and aims. Part of the argument about needing to adapt social security to an increasingly insecure labour market, to the fact that people move in and out of work, change jobs and so on. The fact that in-work poverty is on the increase and there's more people with low pay and also irregular pay, so the need to adapt our social security systems. Also the case about the need to make social security simpler to understand, easier to access, simpler to administer. So both are about really one benefit working age people, which is not dependent on your labour market status. But there are big differences in the structure. And taking the basic income of network definition, the 5 characteristics that they say about basic income, universal credit doesn't score particularly well. Yes, it's a regular cash payment, a periodic cash payment, but it's not individual, it's household, it's not universal, it's means tested, and it's not unconditional. There are serious work requirements in there. It is, I added a couple of other elements to it. It is a single administrative system, so it does have that in common, but it's not a guaranteed minimum. The amount you get universal credit can be reduced, and it's reduced for quite a lot of deductions. So there's sanctions if you fail to comply with work requirements. There's deductions for overpayments and other benefits. There's deductions for advances if you've had an advance payment or a hardship payment. So for some people, the amount they receive in universal credit is reduced below the level that is, the amount that's set out. The DWP recently described it as the biggest change programme in Europe and went on to say the UK is the leader in welfare reform in the world, I believe they also went on to say. What issues, I was quite challenged here trying to think about what it might help us think about in terms of introducing a basic income. So I had a couple of do nots. Obviously, do not introduce at the same time as austerity. A radical reform like this at the same time as you're cutting benefits can't be a good combination. Don't underestimate the challenge of getting people into the system. It's actually quite hard to get people into the system and make sure they're part of it. Don't assume that IT can solve all the problems. The original white paper said the IT problems were, there's a moderate challenge in designing an IT system. It's actually been one of the biggest challenges that we've been faced there. And don't underestimate the need for an effective and ongoing communication strategy. I think DWP have been on the back foot a lot of the time in terms of getting out the message about universal credit. And then some challenges. Well, a single payment, all the eggs in one basket, as we put it in the UK, you probably have a similar phrase. What do you do when this fails? If you've only got one payment going to people and something goes wrong, it's pretty catastrophic. So a single payment can be challenging. The choice about how you roll it out, also important. Jamie was interesting talking about the difference between doing experiments, doing pilots, just going for a big rollout. And those are important issues when you're thinking about what it should be like to actually get this system out. Responsiveness to changes in income and circumstances. For some forms of basic income, this is important because some forms of basic income do take these into account. I know the most pure doesn't. And then I think there is a big challenge when you're integrating benefits for people of working age between out of work and in work, that there's a difference in your income being your only source of income when you're out of work to being part of your income when you're in work. You can't risk it when it's your only source of income, but if it's only part of your income, it's less catastrophic if it goes wrong. So some challenges there, I think, in terms of thinking about both the design of the basic income, but also how do you implement, how do you bring such major change into the system. I'm going to stop there. There's some references and lots to read if you need to know even more about universal credit, which will be available on the slide. So thank you very much.
And now you have the opportunity to ask questions. Has any questions come up during the presentation? Yes, sorry.
Are there systems in place for when couples break up? Because you said this for household and unmarried person.
Yes, so you can, if a couple separates, you can, each would then make their own claim, as it were. So it is possible for people to go into their own individual claim if they separate. And we have some in our sample for whom that has happened, so they've gone on to an individual claim. In fact, some of the joint claim may carry on. So if there were debts in the joint claim, there were some overpayments and deductions, they may still go into your individual claim. So we had examples of people, women who were left with debts that belonged to their joint claim as they went into their individual claim. So you don't actually leave your joint claim completely behind. Some of it will carry forward for you.
I was wondering why the 5 weeks delay. Really, I don't understand it. It's like they want the system not to be popular.
You think, wouldn't you? Originally it was 6 weeks actually, so that's one of the concessions that the government made along the way. Part of it is that this monthly assessment. So what they're saying, part of this relates back to this idea that it should be like work. So they're saying getting a benefit should be like a wage. Well, we're all paying our wages monthly in arrears, aren't we? So why aren't we paying our benefits monthly in arrears? In fact, that's not even true because for many particularly low-income people are paid weekly, not monthly, but this was the model. So we're paying our wages monthly in arrears, let's pay our benefit to mimic the wage system. Therefore, we need to assess people's incomes over that month. So the first thing we need is your retrospective income over the past month to make the calculation, and then it'll take about a week to get the payment into, to sort out the admin and stuff like that. So it's a mixture of the monthly means test and then a bit of time to organise the payment. In actual fact, the evidence shows that I think it's about 70%, maybe a bit higher now, are paid on time. Lots of people delay making their claim, first of all, so coming into the system, people don't immediately make a claim, immediately they might be eligible. Then the system requires you to verify, there's a lot of information you have to supply into the system. You've got to do all this online. That's also a source of delay. People find that they don't have that's why all these systems have been set up to advise people. People don't have the information they need to make the claim online, so they have to go back and keep getting, finding things. So the actual process of making the claim is really quite challenging. So 5 weeks is the minimum. If all goes well, you will get your first payment within 5 weeks. But for many people, that doesn't actually work out in practice either.
We have a question.
Just to make sure that I have the right understanding, if I compare what you said to what JD said before, and knowing that the Conservative Party is now forever in power in the UK, I just asked for the ideology which is behind this concept. I had the feeling that this is not about giving people the security, because one of your end pages was there is no really basic income. And my feeling is more it is a conservative concept to put everything together and then to make it more simple, so to focus on IT. Is this correct, that there is a different picture of humanity or of the society we are making? It's a conservative model, is this correct?
Yes, it is correct. It's conservative model. It actually came out, the original proposals for a universal credit came from something called the Centre for Social Justice, which is a right-wing think tank. So quite influential. And the director, one of the directors of that think tank, is Ian Duncan-Smith, who's a Conservative MP, who then became the first Secretary of State in the coalition government after 2010. And he was charged then with pushing through this change. So it was Ian Duncan-Smith, whose think tank had been very influential in presenting the change and then putting it through in government. And it was, yes, so it is a very strongly Conservative supported measure. Having said that, though, the other minister who worked very closely with Ian Duncan-Smith was David Freud, Lloyd Freud, who was formerly a Labour minister. So there was some, certainly at the beginning, some support across the political spectrum for the idea that we needed a simpler system, that reform was needed. But the particular form of universal credit has definitely been designed by the Conservative Party in government.
May I ask you also about your personal position? Just comparing to your position with what Jamie said, where are you?
See, I'm an academic and I don't have personal position. I was always sceptical about the idea of universal credit because it seemed to me that we have different benefits for different purposes. That the social security, and this may be something about basic income as well, the social security system is complicated for good reasons. So for some bad reasons, because sometimes it's just accretion over the years and you've added bits on and dealt with problems as they've gone along. But also people's lives are complicated. We aren't all the same. We don't all live simple lives. And there are reasons why we have different forms of provision for people in different circumstances. So I was always sceptical that this was the right way to go. It seemed to be that simplification, that the aim of simplification is not in itself necessarily a good thing, or you have to think carefully what you mean by simplification, because I think simplification for the administrative system is one thing, simplification for the claimants might look quite different from that, simplification for the general public and our understanding of the benefit system is another thing. So I was always a little bit sceptical that this would work in practice. And in fact, with my colleague, Fran Bent from the University of Oxford, we wrote quite early on that the system looked as if it had been designed for a theory of what people should be like, not what people are actually like. What lives should be like, not what people's lives are actually like. And I think that is a shortfall in the design. So I've never been a big fan of universal credit.
What would you like to do? What would be your concept? Is it Jamie's concept, or what would you prefer?
I struggle a bit. I can see the reasons why people say it's difficult to change universal credit now that it's got so embedded into the system. And actually quite a lot of the voluntary organisations and people dealing with claimants claiming universal credit say, don't change it all again, we can't bear another radical change. It would be too much for people to live with if you go for another big radical change in it. So I can see that there's a lot of concern about the idea that you should radically change it. I think there are other bits. Universal credit isn't the only thing. I think all these other austerity measures need to be reversed. So I put my focus on getting rid of some of those things like the bedroom tax and the 2-child limit. I think all those should be reversed, and that we should look again at ensuring that the Social Security does provide an adequate minimum income for people. I'm not sure I quite answered your question, but I'm being and I should say probably, I'm not entirely convinced by basic income as the answer to everything either, so I will say that one.
By all means. I think there was a question.
I'm Dagmar from Poland. I'm sure that I don't understand everything because it's a little bit crazy for me, this system, but because what is the problem? I don't understand how it works for the unemployed people. Because if you say that it must, there is a conditionality, so you must work. So I believe that the idea is to make people work.
Yeah.
But the problem is that in rural areas, for example, it's much harder for people to get a job.
Yeah.
And today, work very often is linked to destroying the biosphere and making something wrong for the planet, for people, and so on and so on. So we are obliged people to destroy the planet, in fact. So it goes in this direction. if you don't destroy the planet, you cannot live. That is something completely not sustainable, unjust, and is this I don't know, this thinking, this idea in the discussion, in the debate, that doesn't matter what you do, the idea is to do something anyway.
The value of work is very strong in the UK, if I can put it most times. So the view that everyone should be in work, and that work, and I suppose there's two versions of it. One is work is good for you. You are healthier, happier, more independent, and so on if you're at work. The other is more punitive, if you like. If people are too lazy, if you let them stay on benefits, they'll just lounge around. And the basic income arguments as well about, that people, if they aren't forced into work, will choose to just sort of waste their time at home and not do anything to contribute. So all those threads have been very strong in the UK. I don't think there's much discussion in the social security area about the fact that work is itself a bad thing, can be a bad thing, as you say. Although there is more discussion about good work. Should we be forcing people into any old job, regardless of conditions and what their working lives are like? Or should we be concerned about providing good, that employers need to provide good jobs, as it were, so secure jobs, reasonable wages, good conditions of work, and so on. So that does enter into the debate to some extent. For unemployed people, you would sign your claimant commitment, and your claimant commitment says, I will spend X hours a week searching for work, and I will search for these jobs. And then you have to fill in your online form to say, this week I applied for 10 jobs. Here's the 10 jobs I applied for example. Now, you're right, if you're in certain areas of the country, you're going to struggle to find those jobs to apply for, but you have to show that you're working, that you're seeking work. You have to show that you're actively seeking work. If you're in work and you're working part-time, and this is particularly one I think for women, so a lot of lone mothers in the UK will work part-time because they're bringing up their children and working alongside, you will be expected to seek, say you're working 20 hours a week, you will be expected to search for work for up to 35 hours a week to prove that you are spending that time. So for people in work, and this is a very controversial aspect of it, for people in work, they're also expected to do more to increase their hours of work or increase their pay. And that's very new, and people think it's bizarre. People go, I'm already working, how can you expect me to also spend time? What's the logic in that? So there is some concern, it is controversial, that aspect of it.
Thank you.
Considering that now, as we heard, that it is a conservative politic, I would like to know how the term couple is defined. Is it only hetero-reflecting married couples, or is it heterosexual couple living together?
Yeah. No, it's everyone. Yeah. You don't have to be married. You don't have to be heterosexual. It's couples who are living together. So that's the definition.
So I go along. So the household, who tells about the household? Because in Austria we had always this discussion. There are people living together. They are maybe no couple. They're just living together. Are they calculated as one household? Something like this. I have two other questions. Sorry. The second one is about elderly people. How are they calculated?
Sorry, which? Elderly people. Yeah.
And the final is, how is the calculation done for a family? I don't know, family, 2 kids or something. How high is the amount approximately? Is it near the basic income? Or how much can we figure out there?
So living together, the UK for a long time, because we have a means-tested system, you have to decide whether people are living together, and the rates vary if you're a couple. So if you're 2 single people sharing a home, you are 2 single people sharing a home. If you're living together, you're going to get less money, in fact, because you're a couple. The test in the UK for many years has been that you live together as if you're a couple. You have your meals together. So carefully, it's not about sex. So you're not allowed to ask about that, but it's about, do you present as a couple? Do the neighbours think you're a couple? Do you eat your meals together? So it's a kind of social definition, if you like, of living together. It's very problematic, and over the years in the UK it's been an issue that's come in and out of concern and so on, but that's the idea, that you live together. Elderly people, interesting elderly people, and in particular elderly people aren't part of this. When you're at pension age, you've got a different system, there's a pension credit that you can get, but there's an interesting combination of people where one's over pension age and one's under pension age. My husband is over pension age, well I'm over pension age as well, but anyway, he's older than me. So if one of you is over pension age and one of you is under pension age, actually the rules say you stay in the universal credit system, which is less generous. So for some elderly people, there's already been concern that they've been put into a less generous system because of the way the rules work. And it's not insignificant in terms of numbers. The amounts, I thought you might ask me that, so I quickly looked it up. So if you're a couple, you get less if you're aged under 25, by the way, so younger people are going to get less money out of this system than older people. Again, the logic in that is, why should younger people, if they're living independently, receive less, but they do. So if you're a couple and you're age 25 and above, you get about £500 a month for you as a couple. So what's that going to be in euros? About 560, something like that in euros. And then for each child, you get about £270 a month. So a couple with 2 children are going to get about £1,000, about £1,000 a month, yeah, something like that.
Yes, but only for if you have a third child, it will not be.
Well, the third child rule is a bit complicated. If you've already got 3 children, you're okay, you'll get for every child. It is about people having another child. So if you've got 2 children and you have another child while you're claiming, it's the third child that doesn't come into the system. So it only affects people, when I say only affects people who have another child. And the logic, kind of back to values and so on, the logic says, well, if you're in work and you have another child, you don't get any extra wages, so why should you get any extra benefit? It's an appalling policy, in my view, and described by a colleague of mine as the worst social security policy ever, because you are treating children differently for no good reason other than their birth order. So you're giving the first two, it is an appalling policy. So that's the sort of thing that we need to scrap in a hurry. And actually, Labour Party have said in their before we get to the manifesto, that they had made an announcement that said that they would scrap that, they'd scrap the bedroom tax, they'd scrap. So the Labour government have said that they would, and I'm sure other parties will come out against those measures as well. That's Conservative policies. Yeah.
Okay, let's take one more quick question and then we move on to the next speaker. And at the end, we can also have some more questions.
Yes, my name is Renat Rombar from the Netherlands. I have a question about the self-employed. I'm self-employed myself.
Yeah.
In Holland, we have like 1 million people that choose for this self-employed schedule. Some of them do not earn enough money. It's kind of a poverty in itself. All the politicians also are supposed to be self-employed. Should not everybody be self-employed? Because is employment not a kind of a modern slavery? And a past that everyone tells you.
Well, the way the self-employed are treated in universal credit, because yes, the idea is that the benefit should encourage self-employed. You should be able to become self-employed, and actually that would be a good route for many people. That would be the route they would choose and want to do. For the first 12 months, when you're self-employed on universal credit, whatever you earn goes into the calculation. So you report every month. You say this month I got X, and then the next month I got Y, and you report in, and your universal credit is adjusted. That happens for the first 12 months. After that 12 months, there's something called the minimum income floor that says, if you're self-employed, you must be getting at least the equivalent of at least the national minimum wage of 35 hours a week. So we're going to assume that's your income, even if it isn't, and we'll pay you universal credit on that basis. So, and the logic behind it is, we don't want people to stay, you see, freedom only goes so far. We don't want people to stay self-employed on low level of self-employment for lots of years. We want to make sure that they move up, as it were. So you can't spend 10 years self-employed just at a very low level of work after the first year you're going to be required or expected to be doing more. So it's a kind of partial recognition of self-employment, but not a complete recognition.
Okay, thank you, Jane, very much. This was very interesting. I'd like to also continue the discussion at the end, possibly, but now
Thank you.
we will have King Evangelista from Belgium, and he's a policy advisor for the Green Party, Ecolo, in Belgium.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation, Visio and Jeff. I think it's really important for us Green to share good practices and to be aware about what are the political propositions in different countries. So I'm really happy to be here. My name is King Evangelista. I'm a policy advisor for the Belgian Greens, the French-speaking Belgian Greens, Ecolo, and I'm an economist. I've been working a lot on economic, social, and fiscal policies and on fighting poverty and basic income. Today I will be presenting a concrete political proposition that we made that was in our program in the last election, which is a basic income for the young, for the 18 to 26. And I will also present how we got there, what were the discussions, what were the main obstacles and the main controversies. Because basic income has been widely discussed among the Belgian Greens for the last 30 years since the creation of the party. In the text laying the foundation of the party, there is no mention to basic income as such, but there is a reference to guarantee income, to increase social participation of individuals and to create new solidarities and emancipation, expand the liberty of choice, which for me are a bit linked to the idea behind basic income. But this being said, and to be perfectly honest, it was quite a challenge to make a concrete proposal that was in the program, that we had to defend in political debates against other political parties. And even inside the Green Party, it was not everybody was on board. There were two main fears about this political proposition. The first one was that basic income would weaken social security, would replace some part of social security. And the other fear was that basic income would be too costly, and so that it would have a negative financial impact on other social policies. So those were the main fears that we wanted to address in our proposition. So what we did is not create a working group on basic income. We started working on social protection, social security, identifying the gaps, the problems, and trying to address them. So we found structural gaps, political gaps, and gaps linked to the evolution of society. I will explain. Structural gaps are dependency to economic growth and to full employment, which can be a problem, especially for us, Green. In order to finance your social security, you need people working, you need to create jobs, you need financial and social cotization revenues, and so you can have a problem between not working and working people. You can also have a problem with the fact that the social transfers are made to the household and not the individuals. We've been talking about that a lot already, but this is really a big problem for us, because you can have two different persons who have exactly the same career and they paid exactly the same amount of tax and social cotization, but one is living in an household and the other is not, and so they will not receive exactly the same benefits. And this is especially damaging women, because they usually are the person in the household that is not benefiting from the system. The political gaps, we've been mentioning them also. It's mainly the conditionality problems, controls. We don't have this bedroom control in Belgium, but we have sometimes the administration going to households, looking at how much toothbrushes you have in your bathroom to know exactly with whom you're living and to what benefits you're entitled. Complexity, non-take-up, that is a problem when you have the right to a social transfer, but you do not exercise that right because you're not aware about it, because it's too complicated to get it, because you're ashamed to do the process in order to get it. And also activity traps, that's when the revenue gap between being employed or working or not working is too narrow, and you don't really have an incentive to participate in labor, because even it's not only about salary and benefits. It's also sometimes when you start working, you lose your benefits, and you have to put your children in kindergarten. You have to pay social transport in order to get to work. So it's not only the difference between salary and benefits. It's more than that. And also the problem linked to the evolution of society. So social security in Belgium is quite effective. We have in the OECD country the biggest difference between the poverty level before and after social transfers. So in Belgium we redistribute a lot, but still we have some problems. Because the system is, was designed after the Second World War in a specific context with the traditional family model, with the man being the main bread earner and the woman working but not being paid. We had this traditional family model. Now it's really changed. Now you can have a grandfather living with their grandchildren. You can have students living together, adult students, and it's really difficult to identify if it's an household, if they share their revenue or not. Usually the household is a black box, and really it's complicated to address the different position in this. And also the careers have changed after the Second World War. You started in a company, being 18, and you worked there until you retired. Now you can be employed, self-employed, you can have more gaps in your careers, and the actual social security system does not address really well all kind of those situations. So we were thinking about a system to address the gaps, and we wanted to develop some of the tools there to fill the gaps, which are universality, individualization, and conditionality. So those, you see where we're going. We're going to basic income, but through a different path. And also we wanted to put boundaries in place in our proposition. So the boundaries were, you have to have a new proposition that will decrease poverty, and that the net income of individual cannot decrease unless you are above a certain threshold. The financing of other social policies cannot decrease. The basic income has to complete and not replace existing social security. And you need strong regulation on the labor market, which are already in place but not always really implemented, like no mini jobs, no false self-employed, and a guaranteed minimum wage above a certain level. And the last boundary, the last red line that we did not want to cross was that the cost of the proposition could not be higher than 10 billion euros a year, which is 2.5% of the Belgian GDP. So we came with various concrete propositions, tax credits, minimum guaranteed income, and also basic income. And even in the basic income proposition, there was a lot of different proposals. Depending on the amount of the basic income, we had proposition around 400 euros a month until 1,000 euros a month. Replacing what other transfer the basic income would replace, who pays, on which deciles would have a decrease in their revenue because they would have an increase in their taxes. And so we came with the many propositions, and we tested them against with unions, social civil society, other political parties. And the thing is that we saw that it was pretty complicated to make a compromise and to reach an agreement with the different actors of the society. So then we changed a bit our strategy, and we started working on small steps. Not one big solution for every problem, but small propositions. For example, a basic income for old people, basic income for young people, a complete automatization of all social transfer, and so on and so on. And we continued the discussion. And in the end, we compromised, we agreed on this proposition, a basic income for the 18 to 26. Because it was difficult to find an agreement, but we thought that, okay, this proposition, we can defend it in the public debate with other people. So the concrete proposal is unconditional basic income for 18 to 26 years old, and the amount is 460 euros per month for every person between 18 and 26 in Belgium.
Instead of what?
On top of everything, just a new thing.
Okay.
Well, I'll develop. Some things change, but so first question: why focusing on the young? Like I said, it's a compromise. It's not ideal. We do realize that, and it's a small step strategy. Of course, the idea in the end is to increase the amount of the basic income and put more people in the system. But we can at least try something and see if it's working or not. Also, because in Belgium, the young, the 18 to 26 years old, are a disadvantaged category. I will go more into details afterwards. And also because many young people do not benefit completely from the existing social security system. So, unemployment rate is higher within the young population. Here you can see it's around 6% in Belgium in the total population, whereas for the 18 to 24 it's 18%. And if you look more specifically in other categories, people who don't have a high degree, people in big cities, and people from foreign origin, then you will have unemployment rates much higher than those 18%. And it's really a problem because the system actually kind of works well for people in the system, people who have worked, who have paid social cotization and are entitled to unemployment benefits. But for the young who go out of school and try to get unemployment, to get into the system, facing such a high rate of unemployment, they just don't really start. You know, they don't get in and they don't benefit from the thing. The poverty risk is higher. Here you see that it's around 16% for the total population, whereas 21.5% for the young. Same for a severe material deprivation rate by age. And if you look at the trend in the last 20-25 years, you see that it's the yellow line is the 65 plus, the elderly. The blue line is the total population, and the red orangish line is the young people. So you see that in 2005, the more disadvantaged category were the elderly. And the at-risk of poverty rate decreased in that category until now. You can see that the poverty of the total population is quite flat, but the poverty risk of young people did increase, especially after 2010 and the financial crisis. Yes?
Just ask you for how long young people are in average unemployed? 2 years, 1 year?
I don't have this information, no, I don't know. But I do know, and I will get to that later, that the unemployment rate, there is a shift, a threshold around 25. Before 25, the unemployment rate is pretty high, and after 25, it's is lower. So this is one of the reasons why we choose this threshold.
These figures are mentioned, or
Sorry?
the figures are mentioned in Belgium.
In Belgium, yeah, those are the numbers in Belgium, yes.
Okay.
Shouldn't you differentiate between autochthone Belgians and allochthone Belgians? I have heard much higher figures for allochthone people. There is a real problem, of course.
Definitely.
And maybe that the white native Belgians are not.
Yes, those populations are facing a higher poverty risk and a higher unemployment, and they will benefit more if we introduce a basic income. So a last image of the situation. Here you can see the beneficiaries of the RIS. It's the Belgian equivalent of a guaranteed income if you have no other income. And you can see the blue line above. Those are the young, less than 25 years old, and you can see that it's the category that has been increasing the most in the last few years. So this is why we focus on the young people. Why 26 years old as a limit? So of course it's an arbitrary decision. We had to put the limit somewhere, but like I said, there is a threshold at this level for many existing social transfers. So for example, in Belgium you have child benefits that can go until 25 years old, and other social benefits that also stop at that age. And it's also a threshold in income and labor participation at that age. So to answer the question, 35% of 18 to 26 years old have a job, and 70% of 25, 26 years old have a job. So really, around 25, 26, it's really where you do get in the labor market in Belgium, in EG. But this 26 years old limit is of course open to discussion. It's not a blocked level. We had some discussion about and some proposition about this basic income being allowed to everybody between 18 to 26, but they can, if they prefer, they can use it later, like as a joker. So if you're 18 and you don't want to use it, you're working, you're well, then you can keep this, and when you're 30, you can have this 8 years basic income advantage. And then the third question is why 460 euros a month? So 460 euros is the lowest level inside the boundaries that I mentioned earlier, that nobody is losing and everybody sees their revenue increase. There is a trade-off between the impact on the individual income and the whole financing of the proposition, because we wanted something feasible and something concrete that wasn't too expensive. And so 460 euros, the basic income replaces some existing social transfers, like child benefits, above 18 years old, of course. And also there's a tax credit for working parents that exists and only benefits people above a certain level of income, because it's only working people. So this we scrap also, and we replace it by the 460 euros basic income. But we do the math. We did the math, and there's nobody who with these benefits gets more than 460 euros a month. So nobody is worse off if we put this basic income proposition in place. So I said that already. This proposition respects the boundaries. No young beneficiary is worse off. No impact on other social transfers. You have a decrease in poverty and inequality, and the total cost of the proposition is limited. No big negative impact on public finances. So, how much does it cost, and what are the redistributive effects? The total gross cost is easy to calculate. It's 400 euros multiplied by 12 months, multiplied by the numbers of young people, which is 7.4 billion euros per year, which is quite a high amount. But the total net cost is different because the basic income replaces, like I said, family allowances and tax credit for parents. You have a positive effect on the economy because you increase the revenue of the people. They will spend more, you will get more revenues in tax, more revenue in economical activity. And also, our proposition, the basic income is taxed. So it's not a net income that you receive, it's a revenue like a salary or like another social transfer that is taxed. And if you take all that into account, the net cost of the proposition is 3.1 billion euros per year, which is less than 1% of GDP and which is less than 3% of the social security budget for the moment. So it's a cost that is bearable and that it's completely feasible. And then what are the redistributive effects? What is the net increase in income, of the different young people that we are considering here? If we imagine young with no income and living with his parents, so he will receive the 460 euros per month basic income, but the parents will lose the tax credit and the child benefits they were receiving before. So the net effect for the student, for the young, not for the household, is plus 309 euros per month. If you are young and receiving unemployment benefits, you will receive this basic income, but it will be taxed because unemployment benefits are taxed in Belgium. And so instead of 460 euros per month, you will receive 360 euros per month net. If you are receiving this minimum insertion revenue, so you do not have any other source of income, then you will get the full basic income, untaxed 460 euros. And if you are 18 but you are working, and you are working full-time at the median wage, then you will receive a little bit less than 300 euros net per month. So we did all those calculations to show that it was feasible, it wasn't that expensive, that it was benefiting more to lower revenue deciles, and it was quite complicated to get there, but in the end it was useful during the political campaign, and the public opinion was pretty receptive to the idea. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. Very, very interesting. I love the practicality of your plan here. Questions? Great, here we have one.
What I really like about your concept is that it goes in baby steps. If I think about the German conversation you have about this topic, this could be a really nice first step, because if you just change or if you just face the whole system, many people think, oh, that's much too much. So this is a very smart idea. So do you think that this would be also something other countries could go? And I like the way how you introduced it. This seems to be my green concept for it.
Thank you.
Nice. I would vote for you.
That's fine.
But yes, it was pretty difficult to convince people, even inside the Green Party, so we had to find strategies to do it. And the small step technique was pretty good, so we had a full list of small steps, like I said, for the young, for the elderly, automatization, complete transparency, and so on and so on. And so we have a long plan for the future.
I'm Susanna from co-president from Jeff. I also would like to go in this direction because, as you know, one of these ideas of this transnational project is also to see what we can do on the European level. So do you think this could be an idea to develop this further on really as a European model? Or are you thinking on this, or can you imagine this, that we can follow on this? Because I think that we need a small part to start with, and as our social systems are so different in all Europe, so if we don't take out one aspect and to work on this, but to show also that it's in Europe possible, no? That's to put it on the European level. So I would like to know if you have thought of this, or if we can, if you think this could be a debate.
Yes, definitely. It's a really good point. Like you said, the social systems are so different within countries, and when you start working on basic income, you will have an impact on social policies, on fiscal policies, on economical policy, on the labor market. So it's really difficult to have one system for the whole European countries. But this proposition is just something on top of existing social security. You don't have to change anything almost. So you can apply it to different realities, to different countries. And it's a small step, and it's a low amount, and it's really benefiting the good population, the population we want to target. So I really think that this proposition could be applied in any other European country pretty easily, yes.
My question is, what about the housing benefits? Do they keep them? If there are, I believe that there are in Belgium.
Yes, they keep them. They keep everything except for the child allowances and the tax credit.
So for when we are discussing the European system, in many countries, in Poland, for example, there are no housing benefits. So, the amount must be adapted to that, because it makes a big difference, in fact, these housing benefits.
Yes, of course, but the problem when we discuss basic income is that a lot of people think that basic income is like a miracle that will solve all the problems. It's not. It's just one tool within the social and protection security system. And of course, you still need specific benefits, housing benefits, benefits for handicapped people, and so it's not. It will not resolve everything. You will still need housing benefits, but still, it's a good new tool.
Thank you for your presentation. It was very interesting to see. The only thing I was thinking about is, why do you call this basic income and not, I don't know, special credit for young people? Because I think it's very dangerous to take this item, basic income, for many different things, and everybody has some other idea in his mind what that might mean.
Mm-hmm.
So the basic idea of basic income was one income which can take all the costs of your life, and so you are served if you just get them. And this would never be with 460 hours. So I think maybe it would be more open-minded just to say what we want. We want is a good social secure, good credits and good grants, and call them grants and not call them basic income. Because it's something different. It's something different. And we have, at least in Austria, we have a lot of grants like this. We have the Mindestsicherung and some other stuff. Yeah? And it is not good, everything, but there are all these parts, and then you have the other social grants, and it becomes very complicated. And the idea was, well, we have this wonderful social basic income, and all this will be very easy, and nobody has to calculate his amounts anyhow. And the administration will be easier because everybody gets the same. And it will not be like this. Yeah. Also, your ideas show this to us, I think.
It's a very good point. It's not a real basic income. It's not universal. It's universal within a certain category of the population. but it is unconditional and it respects others' criteria. We could call it something for the young, but we decided to keep the basic income concept because of the small step technique, because we want to say it's the first step, you will see it's going to work, it's going to improve the situation of the people financially, but also on a more general level. And then from there, we're going to add some building blocks and start increasing the scope of the measure. That's why we still use the basic income idea and concept behind it.
Oh, thank you for your interesting presentation. I'm Thomas from Finland, Visio. And I have two questions. First one technical and second one a bit more political. And first one is, how does this cost of your proposal relate to the total spending, total social spending of Belgium, or some parts of it? If you want to give some kind of approximation about that. And the other one is that if this was proposed in Finland, the first critic would be, and why target the young group because of the disincentivizing effects and discouraging young people from jobs and actually displacing them from labor market for good. And there are good reasons, and I understand them, that there are good reasons to target younger groups, as you mentioned already, but how would you answer this critique, which probably you have received in Belgium as well?
Mm-hmm. So for the costs, like I said, the net cost is 3.1 billion euros a year, and the total spending of the social security in Belgium is 110 billion. So it's 2.5% of the total spending, and so we believe it's a reasonable amount. As for why we focus on the young, so like I said, because it's a disadvantaged category, because they do not benefit fully of the actual system, and I really do not believe that basic income is going to push them out of the labor markets. On the contrary, because the amount is not that high, you cannot live with those 460 euros, but still, it can be an oxygen bubble for you to really do the studies you want to do. You don't have to quit everything and start working from day one. Of course, you have to make sacrifices, but still, it opens the possibilities for your future. So maybe on the very short term, you can have an impact on pushing young people out of the job market. They will not go working for McDonald's from day one. If they want to study at the university, if they want to try being self-employed, if they want to do something else, they have that possibility. And I'm pretty sure that in the medium term, long term, it's going to be beneficial for the labor market, because you will have people who are more educated and more they have more time to think about what they really want, and they can pursue this objective.
As Federation of Young European Greens, firstly, thank you for your interesting presentation. I want to ask, can you say something about correlation between basic income and political participation, like giving people capacity to influence and engage in political processes, and can it help filling these political and structural gaps?
So the main idea, I was talking about this oxygen bubble and this opening of new possibilities. It's exactly like that. You can have more time to study, but you can have more time for other activities, like engaging in political participation. We really do believe that there is a positive correlation between having more unconditional income and having more activities inside your community, and sometimes unpaid activity. So I really believe there is this correlation. Sorry, there was another question in the first question now.
No, it was one question.
Okay.
Yes, I have a question about impact on migration. Belgium has open borders, and there is already an important migration from outside Europe, young people coming. If I had to choose now which country to go to, I would go to Belgium, you see.
Mm-hmm.
So your number of young people risks to dramatically increase with all the young people from the rest of Europe.
Yes, you're right. It's a difficult question. We already have a system in Belgium that will have a right to this RIS I spoke about. And there are conditions. You cannot put your feet inside Belgium and say, okay, I want my money. It's not like that. You still have a specific condition. You need your fiscal domicilium to be in Belgium. You have to be a Belgian resident, not a Belgian national, but a Belgian resident. So there are still some conditions to avoid this kind of problems, yes.
Great. Let's give a round of applause to Kim. Yes. So yeah, it's actually really great to hear what Jane and Kim and also Jamie had to say, because I feel that what we at Visio have been doing this year is really closely interlinked with the same topics we just discussed. So at Visio this year we came out with a report on how to reform the basic social security system in Finland, also including the basic income. And Visio has done work already previously on basic income and also making calculations on the economic feasibility of a basic income model in Finland. And actually Visio and also the Green Party have been in a key role in raising awareness about basic income and actually making it a part of the actual political discussion in the mainstream. But the thing about basic income so far is that it's usually seen as replacing one certain type of benefit in the whole palette of the social security system. And then the question is like, okay, so what then? We just replace this with something else, we still have the whole picture to kind of figure out. And also making the leap to a basic income, which would be, let's say, 560 euros, replacing the basic unemployment benefits currently, that would also be quite a leap to do in one stride. So what we want to do this year is kind of look at the incremental steps. How can we go towards that, and also keep clear in the mind what are the actual goals that we're attempting to fulfill. So first of all, very much like Kim, we also started looking at what are the problems in the current system. One of the problems is that the level of the primary benefits are quite low, and this obviously in itself already can lead to poverty and also increased use of the last resort benefits. And these last resort benefits are quite problematic in many ways. They're often very disincentivizing and also very bureaucratic. So we want to keep people away from the last resort benefits at all costs, and rather have them work in the system on the basic level benefits. And here's some numbers. Currently up to 34% of the basic unemployment allowance recipients who also receive the general housing benefit, they also receive the last resort social assistance, and this is quite a high number. And obviously we'd like to have this lower. So this is one of the key goals for a basic social security system, to try to prevent people from falling onto the social assistance. And the basic social assistance is actually paid out to up to 7% of Finns, which is actually quite high. And in Sweden, the comparable benefit is giving out to 4% of the people. So that's almost going half from what we have in Finland. We also have a complicated patchwork of benefit systems. That's obviously, I think, the case in most countries in developed nations, that with time you have kind of made these many different categories of benefits, and people find this very problematic. It's hard to say like which benefit should you be receiving, and also they often accumulate on top of each other, increasing the taper rate, creating also financial disincentives for work. And there's also a problem with having these different categories of basic social benefits, is that currently there's like integration with one benefit and one type of social service. And the thing is like, if a person would need one type of social service or maybe multiple different types of help, they can only get one on this one benefit. I'm maybe making this a bit black and white, but there is a problem. And to get, let's say like you have some unemployment work done for you, but you actually need some rehabilitation help and services, that would mean that you would actually have to switch onto another benefit. And then in the switching to another benefit, you risk losing benefits for the buffer time in between, and also obviously just having more bureaucracy. So this is kind of like creating unnecessary lines between the different types of needs people have for social services. And as I said, with the high taper rates, there's sometimes just simply poverty or unemployment traps that disincentivize work. And I'm sorry, the graphs aren't finished, but I can just explain real quick. So this would be the current situation for basic social security. So on the bottom you have general housing benefit allowance, and that's in Helsinki that would be 413 euros maximum. And this is for a single person living in their own apartment. And then on top you have means tested benefits, and these have now all been harmonized for the amounts. So this obviously kind of makes it easier to compare, but still they are in different categories, and switching laterally between them can cause problems. So we have here unemployment benefits, actually two different types of basic unemployment benefits. Then we have parental leave, then we have sickness benefits, and also rehabilitation money. So one might ask, why do you need these different categories? They're all the same size, right? And this actually kind of relates to the universal credit question. Should we kind of roll this up into one benefit? Then here's also an example of the taper rate, or in this case, the effective marginal tax rate. So this is not even an extreme example, even though it looks quite bad. So here we have, maybe I should explain the graph a bit. Here, like the total, the cumulative amount of these different colors mean they accumulate up to the effective marginal tax rate. And if that goes up to 100, that means that from each euro you make in work, you actually lose €1. Or if it's 50%, then for each euro you gain, you only keep 50 cents, right? So on the bottom we have the marginal tax rate, just like for income tax. The red one is the basic unemployment benefits. Then the blue one is the general housing benefits. And then if you have kids, you also have to actually pay for childcare. And that's also effectively somewhere taxed like 5 to 10% on top. So then we have all these on top of each other, they start accumulating. And this means that this person in this example, to increase their pay from 900 euros a monthly to up to 2,600 euros, their income would actually not increase very much, very little in fact, because as you can see over here, it's somewhere around 90, their effective marginal tax rate. And this is not the case nearly for all people on social benefits, but this goes to show that this is also a problem for some people. So basically we should have better financial incentives for people to work instead of just staying on the benefits they have now. Okay, so having these as the kind of basic starting points for a model. So I was sort of thinking like, what would be like an updated model for Visio for the basic income, but also for the social security system in general. And it's like this. And once again, excuse the Finnish text, but on the bottom we have a basic income. And then on top of that, we have means tested benefits. So it's like an additional means tested benefit on top of the basic income. So these are cumulative, and they go up in amounts. And then the third tier in this case is last resort social assistance, which is very much like what we have now in Finland. And as a context, when talking about basic income in Finland, it has always been a partial basic income. So like nobody has been suggesting a basic income that would take care of all the economic needs of people. There's always the last resort, social assistance has been like one element in this. But now Visio is suggesting that going forward, at least in the short term, we should also include the means tested benefits in between the last resort and the basic income. So it's 3 levels, and it's for all adults except for pensioners. They have their own pension systems, at least for now. And the reason why I'd be advocating for basic income, even if it were only a part of the basic social security, is that even a small amount of basic income would bring more security and stability. It would help low-income workers and entrepreneurs. But basic income in the long term would also be quite low. So this would mean that in reality, it would be really difficult to get by with only the basic income. And thus you should be gaining, you should be working at least some and getting some more income that way. But with the basic income, it would still help you compared to the situation where you're only working the low income job or maybe doing freelance work here and there or having the odd shift at the market. But then if you're not able to work, obviously for the unemployment or the sickness, you would be able to get the means tested benefit. But in this case, the means tested benefit would not be multiple different types of benefits. It would also be the same benefit regardless of the reason you don't have enough income. That should not be a key element in deciding what kind of services you might need from social work. And the reason for having the kind of lower basic, or like a smaller amount of basic income, at least in this kind of model for the short term, is that obviously it's economically more feasible to have a smaller basic income. Also, I do believe that going up, if you go high enough in the amounts of a basic income, you will start disincentivizing people at some point, at least to some extent. So anyway, with this kind of hybrid model, I do believe it's possible to get the best of both worlds. So you kind of have the security of a basic income, but it would be so low that most people would still actually want to and need to work. But at the same time, nobody would have to stay on only the basic income if they don't have work, and thus we have the means tested benefits. Also wanted to actually there's also a really good point that came with James' presentation about having all the eggs in one basket. I also believe that, for example, in the universal credit model, where everything is means tested and it's also in one benefit, there is the risk of having that, if that system doesn't take into account all the complexities of the individual's situation, they run the risk of kind of falling off of the whole system. So with kind of having the multiple layers, you are kind of hedging the risk, right? So even if the means testing fails to notice your situation, you still at least have the basic income, and this kind of helps you over the roughest situations. I wanted to have this clarification for negative income tax versus the basic income. For Visio, both can be used. It's just a matter of implementation. So the net income can be the same in both situations. For example, here on the left, you have a basic income here in the green. So it never tapers off. You always have this, no matter what income you have on top of it. And then the blue one is a net net salary, and the orange one is the tax, income tax on top of that. So quite simple, right? And then on the right we have negative income tax. So the net income, which is this line here, is exactly the same. It's all mathematical. But here, in this case, the negative income tax is, in effect, a basic income that tapers off. And then once that has tapered off with increased income, then you start paying the actual income tax. And there's a benefit, I think there's benefits for both. For the negative income tax, it means that you have less money that you kind of have to circulate back and forth, and also might be politically more feasible for some people. On the other hand, having the basic income as a solid amount means that it's easier to kind of know how much money you will be getting each month, because there won't be this kind of retrospective calculations of how much money you have gained in the previous month. And this also, for some people, this might be more politically feasible because it kind of better holds the virtues of universality, so that everybody gets the same. But on the other hand, it also nominally it looks much more expensive for the public spending. So, but also one key element in looking at the whole social security system on the basic level is the housing benefits. So as I said earlier, we have this general housing benefit in Finland, but that's a separate benefit from the unemployment benefit. But in practice, the general housing benefit is already a basic income that tapers off with your other income. But it also has some increased bureaucracy, and it's also not individual, so it's a household benefit. So in Visio's model, the supplement would actually be given to the individual as part of the basic income. But this housing supplement would actually vary depending on the local area, so on a provincial level. So for example, in Finland, there could be maybe like 10 areas where you have different sizes of the housing benefits. And also housing supplement. And the basic income housing supplement wouldn't depend on rent, so it would really act as part of the basic income. On the other hand, imputed rent, which is an advantage gained by owning your home versus renting, that cannot actually be taken into account in cutting the housing supplement. So here's the step going forward. So here on the left, we have the current situation. And instead of overturning the whole system and replacing it fully with new benefits, we can go about this incrementally. So first we would introduce a small basic income here and start kind of making the current benefits smaller. so that would make it all more controlled as a change, and also economically more controlled. Only slightly increasing the total amount of the basic social security. Also, these means tested benefits that I earlier talked about laterally would be combined. And then eventually we would have basic income, the basic income housing supplements, and then we would have the means tested benefits on top. And obviously on top of this, the last resort social assistance. But still much more simplified from the current system. So steps towards Visio's model is a small basic income. A small basic income that would by no means be enough for anyone to get by, but it would already bring some of the benefits of a basic income. In this way, we could have incremental steps forward. As I said, even a small basic income would bring more security to entrepreneurs and people now falling between the cracks. And also, small basic income can also be seen as an environmental tax return or a social dividend, especially like now, because we are here mostly here Greens. And in Europe, environmental taxes are something really important that we also want to be promoting. But this also means that then low-income people might have to struggle even more than they do now. So with the basic income, you can kind of compensate this. Also, a step towards this model would be developing means-tested benefits, so combining them and unifying them. And type of the benefit should not determine what kind of social services the individual should have. So even if you have the one means-tested benefit, you should be able to have employment services, rehabilitation, education, counseling, so on. and more integration with providing these services on the local level. And just as a last picture, I just want to show that we were able to make micro simulations and economic calculations for a small basic income. So this is the first step of an income, a basic income of 250 euros. And here we have a situation for a worker on different incomes. So the current situation is here in yellow, and the reform is here in green. And this is without the general housing benefit. As you can see, we would increase the income here, but we have tried to closely match for most of the way, especially for middle-income people, so that the change would actually be really small and evolutionary and incremental for the current situation. Also, with the general housing benefit, it would also kind of make it more neat. And here's the changes in income percentage in yellow, and percentage in red, and absolute euro values in orange. So as you can see, obviously, it makes life much more easier for people living here on really small incomes. Then we designed the tax rate so that it would be basically unchanged for middle-income people. And this increased taxation up over here is purely for fiscal reasons, so it's not actually an integral part of the model. So I hope this was not too confusing in a lot of detail already. I will end here. I think we could maybe go a few minutes over and have a few questions for me, or also for Ken and Jane.
Thank you.
It's funny that you just mentioned Jane too, because that works also for me now. But my impression is that your model is an evolutionary model, and this is something I would compare with Kim's models, with the baby steps. But what I really miss is, and this is where I like Jane's model, even though it's a conservative one. But what I always miss when it comes to the unconditional stuff, a little part. One part of myself is neoliberal, so I expect a little bit of performance, and I really hate when you don't get your ass off and you don't even try to get a job. So this is something where I like that. I want at least to see that you are willing to find something, and you're not lazy. Can you give me one argument why you are into this unconditional so hard? What's your picture of how we should do it? What is your vision? Or what is your vision, how you look at people?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily want to be the one determining what people should be like, and I guess I'm liberal in that sense. Also, actually, for me, one of the reasons having the hybrid model, so you have both the low basic income, but also means testing, which also kind of requires activation, or at least kind of proving that you're doing something or you're receiving services, is that I'm also kind of in between that. I believe that there are benefits for the basic income, but also that the basic income should not be too high to disincentivize people. But the thing is, in the end, we've had some experience now in Finland, that if people do not take part in these activation routines, that their benefits will be cut. And the findings actually show that people who come to these interventions actually come to them, or they are more motivated to come to them if the interventions are actually useful to them, instead of just coming there because their benefits will be cut. And I do believe that most people do actually want to work, do actually want to do things that are good for them and also society. So yes, it is true that it also comes to the kind of to the picture that we have of humans. In most cases, for difficult to employ people, I think it really is more of a case of their capacity at that moment, their education, their state of health, actually. But so I think like going towards basic income and increments and steps, we can monitor this evolution better. That does it become chaos, or does it actually facilitate working better for people?
Pekka Elonheimo, former president of Finland. I would of course want to have full basic income, at least about 600 euros if possible. But I think that hybrid model is what we can get. That is because Greens and the left party are now for full basic income, but the Social Democratic Party is not. And without Social Democratic Party support, it's very difficult to get 121 members of parliament behind our proposals. And in Social Democratic program, they are against basic income, but their social security model includes that kind of basic which is paid to everyone. In their model, only everyone in need, but otherwise it's the same as basic income. And on top of that, the minister state parts. So I think this will be the way we can get forward in Finland in near future even. What I would leave out for now is the changes in housing benefit, because that's another big discussion and there are also big economic interests. I think that if we go too deep in that, we will get big money against us.
Yes, I would agree that doing one step at a time is both politically and also just technically much better.
Yes, it's me who has the microphone. I would like to answer to your question, because this is something that it's old-fashioned thinking. People are lazy, they must work, because if not, they are lazy, they must do something. The problem, yes, but the problem is that there is, first of all, a lot of work that is not paid, like women's work, and everything that is good for society is not paid, and there is a lot of work that is paid that is bad for the society, bad for the climate, bad for the future, and so on. So we must get out of this throw away the old thinking about work and rethink what work is, what activity is. We must think in the concept of activity, human activity, to make it beneficial for people, and just separately think about human activity and about what, how people, what do they do to get their needs respected, or I'm looking for the word, just to eat and so on and so on, and how make people reduce their consumption. How make people reduce their consumption? Because through their consumption today, our system is based on stimulating the consumption to make economy run. And we must change this model, because all the curves of everything are going, to the cover now. So we are in the climate crisis, sixth big extinction of species, and so on, ecological huge crisis, and we cannot make things run as before. So the model must be changed. So speaking about, yes, people are lazy, they must work, get a job, and produce something, a lot of garbage and everything that we don't need, it's stupid. So.
Yes. Thank you so much for organizing everything. Thank you. And